Hello, everyone. My name is Agnes Pelopida, and I'm here with Courtney Appolloni, and we will be talking about quality and meaningful assessment, making assessment work in your classroom and for your students. So we're glad that you are here with us, even though you're here with us remotely. We will go over these slides and present them to you in this manner, but we will also be available to help you out if you have questions and you would like to follow up with us. This is a quote that Courtney and I found really applicable to our presentation today, and it is, "Education is not the filling of a pot, but the lighting of a fire," from W.B. Yeats. We really enjoyed that quote, and we thought it applied to everything that we do in general as educators, but also today to our presentation. Another quote that we really liked, which is even more applicable, is, "Assessment should give us loads of information about what our students understand, what they don't understand, and how well we've taught them." And that's really what assessment should tell us. It should be a way for teachers to collect information, identify instructional trends, and then be able to, from that assessment, derive instructional strategies, or where students are still missing some aspects of in their learning process, or if teachers can move on, and maybe certain students can move on in the curriculum, or if teachers can move on with the whole class in the curriculum. So it just depends on what the assessment shows us. This is a curriculum, instruction, and assessment triad. And so here we see a graph or three circles where we see them all connected. Curriculum, instruction, and assessment are all aspects that should be connected. The curriculum and the instruction should be designed with assessment in mind, always with the assessment in mind. I'm sure you've all heard of design by understanding by design, or backwards design, where you consider the assessment first, and then you design the curriculum and instruction around that assessment to ensure that everything you're assessing is in the curriculum and you've instructed on it.
Research has been done several times in education. We can see this over the years as education has changed several times, even in the times that you guys have been teaching. But one thing is for certain, is that every time a student comes into our classroom, they always have a preconception about what our class is going to be. Especially our math teachers, we can definitely understand this, as students are always complaining about math. For me, well, it was English. Poor Agnes. So when they have preconceptions, it is our responsibility to change those preconceptions and help them develop a competence and a confidence in their ability to do that class. How do we do that? We have to keep them engaged. So if they're not engaged, they are going to fail to grasp some of the new concepts and informations that we're teaching. And therefore, they will not do as well as we would like them to do, whether it be on a standardized test or just getting through the curriculum. So if we keep them engaged by doing some of the things that we're going to look at in this professional development, then we can assume that they are going to be better learners for us in our classroom. So if we have them develop a complete competence in this area, we're going to have them have a deep foundation in factual knowledge. We need them to understand facts and ideas in the context of a conceptual framework. And we need to have them organize knowledge in ways that facilitate retrieval and application. We're going to look at a few of these things in this professional development. All right, so here is a formative assessment technique that you guys can use in your classes and with your online learners. It's called sticky notes. We've done it several times in PDs before, and even with our own staff. How can we use this with online learners? Well, there's a couple of different ways. So for one, I could consider putting this in Blackboard as an assessment, maybe use it as in the test area section, or maybe right in the submission box area. A lot of things you could do, you could put them in the chat box in Zoom. This will also help with participation of your online students. For in-person students, you could actually use the sticky notes in front of you, and you could stick them on the plastic borders that separate you and the students so you could walk around safely and safely distance yourself from your students while still actively understanding if they know the material. You could also use whiteboards the same kind of way. So all of these different ways are still the same concept of sticky notes, even if you're actually not using the stickies themselves.
And so if you would like to, you can pause this video and use the sticky note approach and consider what preconceptions students have when they come to your classroom. So when you're thinking of preconceptions, think of like if I said to you the world is round.
Yeah.
And you're a kid in my class.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say to you the world is round,
Mm-hmm.
what do you picture?
I picture a globe.
You picture a ball, right?
Yeah.
Of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
I picture a plate.
Okay.
It's also round. So just when you're thinking preconceptions,
Mm-hmm.
so we have like hate English class. We have that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the oh, Miss Appolloni, what's the shape of the world? It's round.
Okay.
Okay, so you're probably more exposed to the world and your parents maybe talk to you more. Maybe you're come from a more affluent family than I do, because I just picture the world as a plate. As you know, there are two types of assessment. One is formative, and that's more quick, more frequent, and one is summative, which usually comes at the very end of a unit or at the very end of something that you've taught that's larger, a larger body of work. And we will be discussing what is the difference between the two and what is the role of each in instruction and curriculum design. And we know that they all both play a different role. How do we make each meaningful to teaching and learning? It should be something that we can derive data from. Another great tool to use for formative assessment is called Padlet. You will be able to click on this link once the PowerPoint is shared with you. Another way you could do it is certainly Google search Padlet, and this particular icon will appear and you'll be able to see that you're on the correct page. It's a really easy, really cool tool to use to kind of start almost like a digital whiteboard. What's really cool about it is that you can have your students who are in person as well as your students who are remote use it at the same time. This is a Padlet that I made. You can make the same kind of Padlet. And what's really neat is you can design it however you want to. Courtney has never done a Padlet before, and she has never posted on a Padlet before. Right, Courtney?
Right.
I am going to walk her through how to post on a Padlet right now. That's how easy it is. Okay, Courtney, hit the little pink plus button that you see in the bottom right-hand corner and start typing something. The question that we have here is, what is meaningful and quality assessment? And so, all right, now she can, that's it. Click somewhere else, Courtney. All right, it's posted. Now another person can come over and love it and click the little heart, or you can even add a comment. Hi. That's right. Agreed. So you can do that. So and those settings are also in the Padlet. So when you create the Padlet, you can create it any way you like, where you can allow liking or disliking, which I did not allow. And you can allow commenting or not commenting. You can require that students put their name in. You'll see Courtney is anonymous. It looks like some sort of an ant icon and anonymous, which is fine. But this is a great tool that you can use with your students. It's interactive, it's fun, it's a different tool to use.
When designing a quality and meaningful assessment system, ask yourself, is it an evidence-based process for gathering data and making inferences about learning? Is it not a single test, but a coherent, aligned, and comprehensive set of measures and processes that are responsive to students and those who support student learning? Does it help us understand where students are in their learning? Ask yourself those three questions. And if the answers are yes, then that assessment is quality and meaningful for your class.
So as we initially discussed, we have two types of assessment. One is formative and the other is summative. First, we'll begin by talking about formative assessment. We'll talk about what does it tell us and what is its role in instruction. You all know that Black and Willem are probably the gurus of formative assessment. Their most famous quote is, "Practice in a classroom is formative to the extent that evidence about student achievement is elicited, interpreted, and used by teachers, learners, or their peers to make decisions about the next steps in instruction that are likely to be better or better founded than the decisions they would have taken in the absence of that evidence that was elicited." So the key takeaway from that quote is the fact that teachers should use formative assessment to inform their instruction, to make changes to that instruction and to make any changes to the learning process. Maybe they need to speed up the curriculum. Maybe they need to slow it down or reteach something. The most important element of formative assessment is not only taking in the data and taking in the information through a formative assessment process, but also doing something with that information. This chart shows you the different roles that teachers, peers, and learners take in each piece of the assessment process. So the first piece of the process is, where is the learner going? So that's what the formative assessment should tell us. Where is the learner going? Where the learner currently is. And then how should the learner get to the place where the teacher has designated? And so if it's, for instance, if it's the teacher and what the teacher is trying to do is tell the student how to get there, the way that the teacher could do it is by providing feedback that moves the learner forward. If it's, for instance, the peer, it would be activating students as learner resources for one another. So you would see that a lot in cooperative learning opportunities and group work, of course, or anything like that, or study buddies system maybe that you have instituted in your classroom. So that's how you would kind of mobilize each individual entity, teacher, peer, or learner, in order to move each learner forward.
So when we're doing formative assessments in our classroom, we have to understand that formative assessment is not a test. It's just a way to see how our students are learning and progressing. So it's a process. It's not just used by teachers, but it is used by students as well. So they understand where they are in your unit or your curriculum. This should be taking place during instruction or after class or at the beginning of class to determine how your students are progressing through your curriculum. When you're planning it, you should plan this in part of your curriculum in order to understand where your students are going. Using formative assessment, that gives us assessment-based feedback for both ourselves and our students. What this does is it helps us elicit evidence regarding student status, and it helps ourselves and our students make adjustments along the way. So for instance, if I'm going through a unit and I realize, oh wow, my students really don't know this, that means that I need to back it up and reteach it for a day or a day and a half or whatever it takes. Or if I realize, like I do often in astronomy, students already know this, then I need to go on. I need to move forward. So that's just some ways that formative assessment can really help us.
So you might be thinking to yourselves, Ms. Appolloni, we can't just keep reteaching and reteaching things over and over again. So that's really where personalized instruction comes in. And those are the types of things that we can do with the data that we collect. If any of you are Seinfeld fans out there, you might recall a really cool episode. I'm actually not a Seinfeld fan, but this seems really applicable. It's not about taking the reservation, it's about keeping the reservation. So what was, in this instance, Jerry Seinfeld was renting a car. He was not successful in renting the car because although they took his reservation, they did not keep the reservation. So he had to walk away without a car. This is the same with formative assessment. We have to collect the data and then act upon the data that we collect. So it might be reteaching, as Courtney just said, but it's also a great way to personalize some instruction for our students.
All right, when we are doing and considering and creating our formative assessments, here are the three things that we really need to look at. How is our formative assessment telling us how we need to differentiate inside of our classes? What are the interventions that we need to take because of the information and the data that we've received of these formative assessments? And what kind of acceleration should we be putting on some of our students? In preparation for this PD, I went around campus and I tried to find some really great examples of formative assessments. This is one from our reading teachers, and this is journaling and drawing after reading. And what she does is she has the students read a passage, and then afterwards, they journal and they draw what they were reading. So these are things that they were thinking about, considering what they got from the passage. So there are different learning styles involved in this formative assessment, and yet she's still getting the correct data for her class. She knows if her students are actually getting the information from the passage, even though it's not just like a 4-second quiz. Here are some different approaches to formative assessing that we found that we would like to share with you.
One way to formatively assess your students is Flipgrid. There's a link you can click on once we share the PowerPoint, but this is one of them. This is a way to make very quick videos that students can upload once you create a class and share a code with them. They can very, very quickly upload a video. When we were in quarantine starting March, I remember my son who played some sort of an instrument, I think it was a clarinet, had to make a video of himself playing some notes and playing a song. The wolves howled at the moon as he played. Another one is called the muddiest point assessment. If Courtney scrolls down a little bit, you'll see that this one is quite straightforward and has been used for a long time. I think it looks like 1993. And so the muddiest point is where we ask students to say, what's the least clear for you at this time in your learning? And just calling it the muddiest point seems applicable. The roll the die formative assessment is also really cool and really easy to do. You can ask students several questions. I want you to remember something you learned today, and they either at their table or in their homes or with their group, maybe if they have a small group or someone that they can just kind of make eye contact with across the room, they have to say whatever it says that they have to do. So maybe I want to remember, and if they roll a 1, they want to say, I want to remember that this. I want to remember the Pythagorean theorem, and here it is. Or something you learned today. And so the student would say what they learned today, whether they say it to you or they say it to a partner, again, someone that they can make eye contact with across the room, or share it out in a group chat or something like that. Another really cool way to formatively assess is called storyboard that. This one's probably a little bit more applicable to my humanities friends, although I'm not sure because Courtney really liked it and I feel like she'll end up using it one day in her astronomy class. So what's really neat about this is you can make a 3-tile cartoon and you can add scenes as you see Courtney doing. It's really easy. She's never used this one before either. If you click on characters, Courtney, right up top of the screen, you can add some characters and have them doing different things. As you can see, they can be from different eras, like the classical era, medieval era, and so forth. And you can have them saying something, you can have them doing something, etc. It is a really cool tool, really fun, and kids can get into it. And then they can print it. That's you and I.
Right. Okay, Agnes and I have gone through the formative assessment. So now we're going to go through some summative assessment examples that we've found. And we're going to look at what does a summative assessment tell us, And what is its actual role in instruction? What can it do for us? All right. Summative assessments, what are they? They're formal external assessments, and they do the following things. They measure how much the students have mastered the curriculum up to a summative point or the entire course. They are derived from the standards. That is incredibly important nowadays with high stakes testing and just making sure that our students are actually learning what they're supposed to be learning. We describe them in the syllabus, make sure your students know what they're going to be tested on. They're designed to capture as much as possible of the cognitive and non-cognitive knowledge, skills, behaviors, attitudes, and dispositions that the school wants the students to learn, all of that stuff. They are timed tests sometimes, and they are extended work sometimes. They're designed to produce standard-based scores. So this doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be an actual test. You can use alternative assessments, and they're still giving you those standard-based scores and ideas. And lastly, they include prompts that are released along with the annotated examples of student work that meet the standards. So essentially, they need to have a rubric involved.
So the considerations you should have in order to design better assessments is start small and provide feedback to students along the way. So even though you might be taking in a large project, remember to give students feedback along the way as they're producing the project. We all know what happens to essays that we grade. They end up in the recycle bin most of the time. I know they're digital now, so they still have them, but all that feedback that we've put on the essay is worthless once the student sees the grade, especially if it's an A. And so make sure that you're giving students feedback along the way on large projects, and that you've seen the project and laid eyes on that project before they hand in that big final thing, especially if they're off base. Provide students with the rubric early on in the task. Students should know what's expected of them as they're designing their project, writing their paper, or taking a test. Provide examples across the indicators. So, for instance, if the students are writing that big essay, show them what a good introduction looks like. Maybe an A introduction or a B introduction. Tell them why it's that grade. It really helps them to see, especially if you're using student exemplars. Give students time to reflect on the rubric in their own work. Make that part of your course. Ask them to look at the rubric, ask them to look at the work that they've done, and ask them to identify one point where they can grow on the next test, next assessment. Allow students to correct their mistakes for credit to promote self-awareness and responsibility. That's that aspect of growth mindset that we all know from Carol Dweck. So correcting their mistakes and knowing that they are learning, they are here to learn. They're in our classes to learn, to acquire new knowledge, things that they don't know yet. Allow them to grow from their mistakes. It's interestingly enough, when students get something wrong, they know it better next time than if they had gotten it right the first time. They just remember having gotten it wrong, correcting it and getting it correct the next time. There is an element of triumph there. Allow for collaboration on all or on a portion of the assessment. We all know that we work best when we work together. We all love to collaborate with our fellow colleagues. I love to collaborate with my admin team and with our faculty. Right, Courtney? And so we love to collaborate. That's what we do in the real world. Most of the time, people don't work in silos. So allow time for that. Have common expectations, for example, in writing across all content areas. So just because a student is writing a paper in astronomy class, the expectation should not be different in an English class.
So our big question this year is, how do I assess in a remote or a hybrid learning environment? How do I actually make it quality? How do I make it meaningful? Especially since the elephant in the room says, guess what? Your online students can definitely cheat. They can look at their notes all day long. And so how do we actually make sure that they're learning the material?
So we'd like to highlight a few resources for you for quality and meaningful assessment. The first one I'd like to highlight is Cult of Pedagogy. Cult of Pedagogy is a great website that I like to use myself. The articles that she writes are really useful and user-friendly. She also has a podcast that you can listen to. I know I've shared some of these already with you before. Yeah, there it is. We just searched assessment, and if you scroll down a little bit, Courtney, you can see that there are a myriad of ways that you can kind of approach assessment. One I'd like to highlight for you is the one-pagers one. Courtney, if you can click on that one, you will see a really cool way to assess students. And if you scroll down a little bit, Courtney, you'll see that this is a nice way to approach assessment. Students can create one-pagers. You can have them kind of give them free range, or you can give them a template, which if you scroll down, Courtney, you'll see the template that you can use in your classroom. And here are some great examples. You'll see, of course, that most of them are for more humanities-based subjects. Keep scrolling down. So here are some templates that you can see. And if you keep scrolling, Courtney, you'll see there's other templates that you can use. So certainly you can create these on your own, or you can just print them from here. I know there is a link that you can use right from here. Another great resource is the Learning Personalized link from Allison Zmuda. You'll see a lot of links here. We won't go through all of them with you. We'll just allow you to peruse on your own. But as you look through the different links, you'll find a lot of different articles that you can apply to your own pedagogy and your own practice in your classroom as it relates to assessment. Another great tool for summative assessment is utilizing playlists. And you can make playlists in this website called BlendSpace. There's a link provided right on the PowerPoint that's going to be shared with you, or that is shared with you. And as you go in there, you'll see a really, really user-friendly method of creating these playlists, and then allowing students to move through that playlist at their own pace. And so what's great about that is, of course, our online learners can use it, and so can our in-person learners. Another way that you can create playlists is by using just a hyperlinked document. So it's just a document, or maybe a PowerPoint presentation, in which you supply hyperlinks to the different either assessments or different projects, different links and things like that. So playlists are a great tool because it allows students to move through the assessment or some of the pieces that you want students to do at their own pace.
Well, it wouldn't be a great PD if I didn't show my own classroom off. So here's a couple of just real quick formative assessments that I do that you can use for your online learners and your in-person learners. You may have seen them walking around the campus this year during Equinox Day. Basically, they design a shirt, and you can do the front, you can do the back, and you can kind of have them do whatever kind of interesting shirt that they want to do, as long as it's got the right information. A different way you could do is have them wear like a sign, or make a sign and carry it around. If you don't want to embarrass them, you could just have them do that in class. But it's just kind of a real fun, cutesy little way of getting the kids involved in your class throughout the entire day, and integrate it kind of into other classes as well. Here's another thing that I did. It was called, it was like a phone app, and the kids had to design an application that would have been used on the phone in order to understand what we were learning in class. So here's an example of a girl. She did kind of a fun take on a dating website for extrasolar planets. And so as you can see, the information is all there, but it's done in a different sort of way. That's not a test, and it's not a traditional poster or anything like that. It's taking the information and giving it in a way that was interesting and thoughtful for her. So the last one that we're going to share with you for a summative assessment is the traditional video poem song. Within this PowerPoint, I have included, of course, our beloved Chris. A lot of us had him on campus last year, and since his freshman year, he graduated class of 2020, and we all know him for making wonderful raps and songs about our class. So in this clip, if you play it, you'll hear him rapping about one of his favorite planets, and within that, he gave all of the information that would be put in a traditional test, but he made it into a rap instead. So he was able to use his learning skills, his learning style in order to understand the same exact material without me putting a pencil and a paper in front of him and giving him a traditional test.
If we could have done this PD face-to-face, we would have allowed you all to read about the death of Alphonse the camel. And what you would have read about is the straw that broke the camel's back from different perspectives. Each group would have read a different excerpt from a different perspective. A post-revisionist interpretation of the story, an orthodox interpretation, and then a revisionist interpretation. Together, we would have come to an understanding of what actually broke the camel's back. What's great about this type of summative assessment is that each group does something different, but yet on the same topic. And then together, we would come to an understanding of a multidimensional, multifaceted situation. There might be a writing, an essay that's involved in this, maybe making a poster, a rap song, writing a poem, or however you might see fit. There is a reading piece to this. So there are multiple steps to demonstrating students acquiring of this particular piece of information, but each group has a different piece of the same aspect. And again, they come together to build a sense of understanding.
In summary, well-designed standard-based assessments do the following things. They're matched to the standards. They measure to the degree of which students have mastered a concept. They measure concepts, skills, applications. They're reported by referencing standards, not other students' performance. They serve as a test that teachers want to teach to. And they measure performance regularly, not only at a single moment of time. In closing, we'd like to thank you for listening to our PD and hopefully checking out all the links that we've provided and utilizing the important information that we have given you for this year. We understand that this year is incredibly tough for all of us, but doing some of these fun little things to get us through the curriculum just might help us get through this year a little bit.
Thank you, everybody, for watching our professional development video. However difficult it was for us to make this, not laugh a lot. We did laugh a lot, right, Courtney?
It was
We
a lot
did.
of fun.
So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for clicking on the links, checking out some stuff. And what we would love to hear from you is that you're maybe using at least one thing that we shared with you, because we love to hear that, you know, we shared something with you that you could apply in your classroom. We wish you all a great year, and we'll see you on campus. People are going to be like, these two are morons.